All right, and welcome back to the YouTube. We had a really great weekend. A shitty Sunday, but an amazing Saturday. Nice bounce back after a couple rough 1 in 4 days. Yeah, weekends are great, but I usually bet a significant amount of volume, so making a YouTube video feels kind of weird because I don't really like to just pick 5 games. I think there's so much value to be had. Um, so make sure to keep an eye out either in the Discord or on the spreadsheet. I even posted it in the YouTube community early in the morning there, so hopefully anyone that might be subscribed but not in the Discord um, got notified. So great, solid day. We went 21-10 and won over the weekend. Unfortunately, Sunday we went 1-3, but we really killed the Saturday slate. So that brings our 2025 record to 73, 53, and 2. Um, so many games. I'm not really going to go into any specific ones, but yeah, fuck you, Memphis. That's all I'm going to say. All right, so game number one, we're going to have UT Rio Grande Valley hitting on the road to Incarnate Word, where they are 3.5 point dogs. So I've really been starting to like a lot more dogs lately. So this Incarnate Word, if you look at all like the very high level stuff, this looks like a slam spot for Incarnate Word, but I really don't like them as a team. Like when you watch them, they just don't pass the eye test, even though they have like really solid fundamentals. I think this UTRGV team is simply better, especially on the road. So when you look at the matchup, Incarnate Word has a pretty good matchup here. They're one of the best mid-range shooting teams in the nation against a pretty bad mid-range defense. They'll find some success in the points off steals, but yada yada yada. But they're just such a bad defensive team that I think this UTRGB team who plays, I think they're one of the best teams on the road. They seem to play significantly better when they're not at home against this, an Incarnate Word team that probably doesn't have very many people in the stands. I think this is a pretty good spot for a pretty solid UTRGV team that's kind of shit on, this caliber of team. Incarnate Word, they have good stats, but they're playing bad teams. And I don't know, when you're a good mid-range shooter and you're a pretty bad team in general and you just huck up a shit ton of mid-range shots, I just don't think it's a very efficient offense, and it leads to a lot of inconsistencies. I think Incarnate Word probably wins this game, but I think it comes down to last second baskets. It's UT team. They just shoot up a lot of threes. They're not that good at shooting threes, but they shoot up threes, mid-range shots. They get a pretty decent amount of points off steals. They'll get some boards. I just like them in this spot. I this is one of the few games where I'm just going purely off model. I have UTRGV winning by 1. And I guess I haven't mentioned this, but I'm really moving towards model heavy focus with very slight analysis, because I do think I overthink things and probably miss things when I try to look at the stats myself. The model looks at all of it, spits it out, and then I'm just kind of looking at if there's anything that's jumping out that makes me really hate the spot to avoid it. So yeah, I have UTRGV winning this by 1 model-wise. We're getting a 3.5. As a dog on a good team against a team that's super inconsistent. Yeah, I think there's a chance that UTRGV wins this game outright. They could be lose by 10, but I really like the spot for them. So that'll be my first game for tomorrow. All right, moving on to game number 2. Now, I told myself I would never bet this team, but I really genuinely believe they're starting to figure it out. When you have two, star quality level players on a team, especially in college where the expectation a lot of times is for these stars to play almost the entire game, I think Rutgers has a good matchup. And this Penn State team has been kind of in a similar rut as the Rutgers team has had, but they haven't gotten out of it yet. And so when you're at home, I know this is a great bounce back spot for a Penn State team that has been really underwhelming as of late. They had a pretty solid start, don't get me wrong, but if you look at their most recent games, they're on a 4-game losing streak against some good teams, of course, Indiana, Illinois, Oregon, Michigan State. But this Rutgers team's kind of starting to figure it out. They lost to Wisconsin and Purdue at home, 2 very good teams. But they honestly didn't look as lost as I expected them to. And then they beat the UCLA team, who was also struggling. But then they, went on the road and beat Nebraska. And both the Stars are starting to put up, 20 points each. I think Rutgers can keep this game kind of close, especially if they get, if we're getting 7.5 points here on a Rutgers team that seems to be figuring it out. And a team, a Penn State team that typically does play better at home, but, they are off 2 home losses against, Indiana and Oregon, 2 of the easier teams they've played. They both lost at home. Yeah, I think, this game was kind of a coin toss, so I kind of wanted to dig into it a bit more. So Rutgers is the 13th best in the nation at converting second chance opportunities, and they're going to have a lot of second chance opportunities this game. Penn State is ranked 260th in defending the second chance opportunities to 13th in Rutgers. I think they're going to find some success. Obviously, Penn State's a pretty solid defensive team, top 75 in the nation. But if you can't defend the boards, you being a good defensive team doesn't really mean that much, because Rutgers is going to find ways to score. Rutgers has played the 32nd hardest schedule strength. And so, yeah, they may have a slightly worse record, but I know Penn State's played a few bumps, kind of, fluff up that Big Ten record. So, yeah, I think Penn State has been struggling in this conference play. Rutgers has struggled, but they're starting to look better. Yeah, Penn State, they like to shoot near basket, and I think Rutgers is going to be able to defend the basket decently well, enough to keep this game close. I think Penn State's a better team through and through. I have this modeled as a 9-point win for Penn State, but I do think this Rutgers team is really starting to figure it out, and after that really slow start, I think they're starting to realize that they have to lock in if they want to have any chance at potentially making a run in any kind of tournament. So, give me Rutgers 7.5 underdogs. Game at number 3, we have Fairleigh Dickinson heading on the road to Chicago State. Now, this is, one of those classic, shit meets shit kind of, both are bottom 300 teams, but I really think this FDU team is slightly better. Obviously, Chicago State is 2-17, so record-wise, obviously, FDU is a better team, but I just think they are a super consistently, decent team against a Chicago State team that is extremely inconsistent. And when you match those two up, I think Fairleigh is a pretty good team in this spot here. Northeast isn't really a very competitive conference by any means, but I don't know. You can't really look at the matchup. Both these teams suck on both ends of the floor. They're both incredibly bad. But if you look at the matchups, FDU is due for a lot of positive regression. Chicago State due for a little bit of positive regression. They're just really bad, no matter how you mix it. If you kind of dig into just the trends between these two teams, Dickinson is a really good road team this year. If you want to look at their expectation on the road, they're not necessarily better on the road than they are at home, but they definitely are. Chicago State team has been terrible at home. That's where I don't think they've won a single game at home. If you dig into the situational trends, this FDU team is 10-2 as the away team this year against the spread, and Chicago State is 1-3 as the home team. Obviously, this is the first time that FDU is being a road favorite ever. It's very rare for a bottom 300 team to be a road favorite, but they are in this spot, and they're really good against the spread. I think they're the better team in general. They've been the better team. I don't know what to say. This is just, it's hard to explain anything when it's two shitty teams playing each other. But I think Fairleigh Dickinson, consistency is important. And when you're inconsistently shit versus consistently shit, I think I'd rather take the team that's consistently shit. So, give me FDU -2.5. All right, game number 4. We have Texas A&M Corpus Christi heading on the road to play Houston Christian. Now, this Houston Christian team is a weird one because I've had a lot of success fading them, but I've also had a lot of success betting them. And they are, they're an okay team. There's nothing really to write home about them. But I think this Texas A&M CC team is just too good offensively for them, especially considering, Houston Christian doesn't really have a massive home advantage. If you look at this specific matchup here, we have a Texas A&M CC team who I have, top 200 team, almost a top 150 team, against a Houston Christian team who I'm having at pushing top 350. Like they're barely within the top 350 teams. And if you look at the matchups, Texas A&M they shoot. They love to sit under the basket. They are ranked number 1 in how close they are to the basket when they score. And against this, a fairly small Houston Christian team that cannot defend the paint, they're ranked 331st in near basket percentage given up, and they're ranked 359th in boards given up. I think Texas A&M CC is going to dominate this board game. They're going to dominate the paint. They're going to get a lot of really easy free buckets. They shoot a lot. They're 78th in pace. They're pretty efficient. They suck at free throws, which is obviously not something you want. But I don't think they're going to need to deal with free throws because they're just going to go in the paint and if they don't score, they're going to get the point. And they're also really good at aggressive defense. And I think Houston Christian gives up a lot of really stupid, turnovers, especially at home. I don't know why, but they give up a lot of turnovers at home. I think this is a great spot for Texas A&M offensively. And on the other side of the ball, this Houston Christian team, they don't really do anything too great. They like to shoot mid-range and threes. They'll find some success in the mid-range, but we kind of want them to take threes. They're 346 in three-point percentage. They shoot it under a 30% clip, despite playing a relatively easy schedule. They cannot shoot the three. So again, if they want to take threes, we kind of want them to because they just don't hit them very much. And at the pace that Texas A&M CC plays at, they're going to be they're going to get points. So the only way they don't cover this game is if Houston Christian shoots lights out. And if they're going to be shooting mid-range shots and threes that they don't shoot very well, I think that we have a pretty good opportunity here for a slowly grinded out Texas A&M CC win where they're going to just win this game by like 10 points just from being consistent. Again, if we're looking at regression, this is probably the only reason I wouldn't say I love Texas A&M CC, but you're going to see any kind of regression stat with any team that shoots the ball well because that's just how it is. Regression to the mean typically leads to those kind of situations. And then you look at matchup-wise, Houston Christian plays worse at home. Like, they have no home advantage, and this is a Texas A&M CC team that is pretty consistent on no matter where they play, and they also love to beat up on bad teams. If you look at their rating versus teams outside of the top 200, they're ranked 131st, and if you look at Houston Christian playing teams outside the top 200, they're 280th. So, yeah, I think Texas A&M CC runs away with this game. I fully understand that, this is one of those spots where the home team could show up big time. But, again, I really don't love this Houston Christian team. They're coming off, they barely beat by 9 points UTRGV at home. They lost to McNeese by 16. They won 2 games at home. I think they're just due for another loss here. They won 3 of their last 4, and then in every other game they played this year, they've only won 4 games. I think they're playing way above their head. Texas A&M CC is rolling on a 6-game win streak. They've beaten much better teams than Houston Christian by more than 5. I think this is a great spot for Texas A&M CC to get another win, especially in conference play. So that will be game number 4. All right, moving on to game number 4, we have what I would consider a classic revenge spot. And again, this isn't just purely a revenge spot angle. I also think Montana State is just through and through the better team. So these two teams played in early January. Eastern Washington took the win in their own home court. And now that team is coming over to Montana State's home court, where they play significantly better basketball than they do play on the road, against an Eastern Washington team that plays also significantly worse on the road. I think Montana State bounces back in a big way. I think it's, tantamount that a team that just lost to another team is extremely motivated to crush them when they come into their own court. And I'm sure they've been talking and thinking about this game. They probably should talk to Eastern Washington at the end of the game, looking forward to this game. Again, Montana State, I think they're a much better team. They play much, much better at home. They have a top 50 home advantage in the league. And this Eastern Washington team, although they technically have played slightly better on the road, not nearly as much as the difference in Montana State. I think Montana State is through and through the better team. They're 3-3 at home against the spread. Eastern Washington is 3-7 on the road, and 2-3 at home. So they're significantly worse at covering when going on the road. This Montana State team due for some positive regression. Eastern Washington team due for some positive regression as well, but typically, regression hits a lot harder when you're at home, on the good side, and a lot worse when you're on the road. So again, Montana State, if you look at the matchups individually, Eastern Washington shoots a lot of near basket shots, and Montana State defends it decently well. Eastern Washington also likes to take a decent amount of threes, and that's something that Montana State, is really good at defending, top 20, top 30 in the nation. And then you look at Eastern Washington, they also like to get points off steals. They'll probably find some success there. But again, typically you get a lot more points on steals when you're at home than you do when you're on the road. On the other side, Eastern Washington, they're going to shoot a shit ton of threes. They're going to find success. They're going to find some success off points off steals with that home crowd. Yeah, I think this is a great, awesome revenge spot. The line's not too crazy. Obviously, it's hard to back a team by 6-point favorites after they lost by more than 6 against the exact same team. But I do genuinely think, looking at that game, that Montana State shot, uncharacteristically bad, and this is a really good bounce back revenge spot game. So give me Montana State as 5.5-point home favorites. All right, and those are the 5 games that I'm going to be betting today for January 20th. I fully get, where these are this is just stinky ass slate, if I'm being honest. There's not really any great games to watch. It's a lot of, mid-majors, worse than mid-majors. Really the only sort of exciting game that anyone's going to be watching is this Rutgers game. That's kind of why I wanted to bet it, at least have a side in it. I kind of like Georgetown as 8.5-point dogs in that game, if you were interested, but I'm not betting it because I don't trust this Georgetown team after I lost to DePaul outright at home. Could be a bounce back game. They play better on the road, but this Villanova team shoots threes way too much, and Georgetown can't defend the three. So, not going to touch it, but I do think Georgetown, model-wise, covers. If you have any questions, want me to give me my opinion on any games, comment down below, and I will see you guys tomorrow.